here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. How we sounding, Mr. Producer? We sound good. I'd say we sound great. I want to thank my buddy Brian Sussman for filling in yesterday as I had some family business to attend to. And here we are, and all this talk about the memorial for Nelson Mandela in South Africa and Obama conducting himself in a reckless manner because that's what he does, for which he's cheered on by the lib media. Honestly, I was surprised that Obama and Raul Castro didn't exchange spit. Really. We all know Obama has an affinity toward these totalitarian regimes. I'm not surprised in the least. And he's bowing to them and shaking their hands. Almost the bigger the gulags that they have, the more deference he gives them. And I was thinking about this, and I'm not going to waste a lot of time on it because, folks, here's the truth. No one will remember what Obama said in South Africa. We don't even remember what he said today, and he said it today. No one will remember much about that memorial other than it was for Mandela. So take that to heart. But I was thinking, when Obama leaves office, there won't be tens of millions of people newly freed from behind the Iron Curtain or under the thumb of some third world dictator and so forth, as they were under Reagan and Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher was responsible for, along with John Paul II and Ronald Reagan and Helmut Kohl, the freedom of over 100 million people behind the Iron Curtain. And with Reagan also in our own hemisphere, in toto. Obama won't be involved in any such movements. In fact, I dare say more people will be imprisoned and enslaved when he leaves office than before he came to office. And it's a disgrace, as I said maybe 2 weeks ago, but certainly last week, how our government, the Obama administration, treated the passing of Margaret Thatcher, who was responsible for the freedom of more people than any of Obama's favorite leaders or what have you. Absolute disgrace. And there they are, clowning it up, acting goofy in the stands, in the cheap seats. Just ridiculous. I listened to Obama for about 14 seconds, and there he was again. What effect Mandela had on him. That started with the I. I said, that's enough. I don't need to hear this crap. And I didn't. And I'm not playing any of the clips either. Because I don't care what he said. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't affect my life, nor yours. One thing that did happen there that should draw our attention, at least to a point, as pointed out in the White House dossier website, when former President Bush, George W. Bush, when his face appeared on the video monitor at the memorial in Johannesburg, he was booed. He was booed according to the White House poll report, which cited local press outlets. Now, the images of Obama and his wife popped up. There were 30-second deafening roar, the poll writer wrote. George W. Bush did more for South Africa and Africa, period, than Barack Obama has ever done. Obama's better at crafting his public image and saying the right things. Bush personally saved the lives of millions of South Africans with his President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, or PEPFAR, ensuring AIDS drugs are available to South Africans' impoverished masses. And he's booed. He's booed. The Washington Compost talked about the success of this program. It said that in South Africa, it was extraordinary. AIDS killed roughly 2.3 million in South Africa, once one of the worst affected countries in the world, and orphaned about 1 million children there, according to the UN. Today, rates of infection have fallen to 30%, and nearly 2 million people are on antiviral drugs. Meanwhile, Obama has cut this program and generally has been customarily inattentive to it, as the Washington Post essentially reported. He's cheered, Bush is booed, the media's slobbering all over Obama, nothing has changed, and it's not going to change. So why punish yourselves? I'm not going to spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours on this program going over what went on over there, because I don't care. It makes no difference in our lives, and frankly, no difference in anybody's life. It's like the Super Bowl of funeral memorials over there. They're all having a grand old time and slapping each other on the back. Looked like Obama was hitting on that, whatever she was sitting next to him, didn't it, Mr. Producer? Look, I'm just calling it straight. I'm not saying he was, but good Lord, it sure looked like it. It looked like Michelle thought so, too. So I'm standing with Michelle on this one. What is it? Pictures have 1,000 words? Well, that one certainly did, in my humble opinion. All right, so I've spent exactly... Yeah, I love... There are broadcasters that say what they're not going to talk about, and then they talk about it for 2 hours. I'm done with it. I think I've spent 7 minutes on it. And I don't even want any calls on this. But I was minding my own business the other day, a day or two ago, and I come across this piece in bizjournals.com, and I post it on my social sites, and my posting it on my social site sends the thing viral. Because when you add my Facebook followers to my Twitter folks, we have almost 1 million, don't we, Mr. Producer? Close. Now, Colin Powell. I don't know if anybody's talked about this. I don't much care. I haven't talked about it. Colin Powell, calling for universal health care in the United States. Why? Well, it works for him. I guess he goes to the VA. He had prostate cancer, was taken care of. His wife had a number of illnesses. She was taken care of. And if it works for him and his wife, well, what the hell? It ought to work for the whole country. And, of course, we all know that the VA hospital system is clogged. It's backed up by hundreds of thousands of brave men and women trying to seek treatment. This is what he says. He says, we're a wealthy enough country. I always love this line. We are a wealthy enough country. And somehow that line gives power, confers power on politicians and bureaucrats to take more and more control over our society because we're a wealthy enough country. We're a wealthy enough country having nothing to do with them. And we're becoming a poorer and poorer country as a result. We are a wealthy enough country with the capacity to make sure that every one of our fellow citizens has access to quality health care, he said. This was at a Seattle fundraiser for prostate cancer. Let's show the rest of the world what our democratic system is all about and how we take care of all of our citizens. General Powell, I want to salute you for your military service. But boy, when you step outside that, your ignorance is just remarkable to me. All you have to do, folks, and many of you have, is go on the internet and look at the National Health Service in Britain. It is a disaster. The number of people who are maimed and killed in the most preposterous ways as a result of a bureaucracy run amok is inhumane. Same with so much of the rest of Europe. Same with Canada, for that matter. It's absolutely outrageous that Colin Powell doesn't do basic research to figure out what the hell he's talking about and instead projects his experience and his wife Alma's experience onto the rest of the nation. Well, we're rich enough. Hey, General, can I tell you something else? We have $90 trillion in unfunded obligations. And next year it's going to tick to $100 trillion. Medicare is unsustainable. Medicaid's unsustainable. Obamacare, our newest disaster, is a disaster. And in the face of all this, Colin Powell's saying, we're a wealthy enough country, we ought to have this single-payer system. Says, I'm not an expert in health care. That's never stopped him before. Or Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act, or however you choose to describe it. But I know this. I've benefited from that kind of universal health care in my 55 years in public life. And I don't see why we don't do what Europe is doing, what Canada is doing, what Korea is doing, what all these other places are doing. I see why, because it doesn't work properly. And while the trajectory of history, the trajectory of mankind, is toward centralized government, is toward tyranny, he should be proud that our country, at least up until now, has rejected this kind of governance. Is he missing all the stories today? The people with cancer who can't get treatment? The parents with little kids who can't get treatment? They're all over the damn place. How does Powell miss this? And they can't get it because of Obamacare. They're making the point that they used to be covered, that the drugs used to be paid for, the treatments used to be paid for, and they're losing them. And this is what happens in Britain and France and Spain and Portugal and all the rest. Powell said, every country I've visited, every developed country, they've had universal health care. They don't understand why the United States of America, which uses more health care just about anybody else, still has 40 million people not properly insured. And there he goes, regurgitating a lie. Yes, maybe 40 million, and it's actually about 32 million people are uninsured, including about 10 million illegal immigrants, including about 9 million young people who don't want coverage. They act as if these are all people in the streets, lying in the gutter, because they can't get coverage, when many of them don't qualify because they're here illegally or they don't want it. So we have to destroy our entire health care system, over 9 to 12 million people, for whom there can be coverage? And is General Powell unaware of Medicaid? It's the biggest budget item for every state, and it's $250 billion every year that you and I pay to the federal government. I think Colin Powell, I think I'll bite my tongue. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Times we heard the era of Reagan is over. Move on. Are we ever going to hear the era of Mandela is over? Move on. Let me ask you this question, folks, and I'm serious about this, because this juxtaposes two men, two presidents, two philosophies, and tells you where we'd be going. If Barack Obama had been president instead of Ronald Reagan during the Reagan two terms, do you think the Soviet Union would have been defeated? Do you think the Iron Curtain would have come down? Do you think the Berlin Wall would have come down? Of course not. Of course not. Because Reagan had his head screwed on right. Because Reagan knew tyranny and totalitarianism. And Reagan wanted to defeat it. Obama appeases it and too often embraces it. I just want you to know that Raul Castro has blood on his hands. He was an executioner by his orders, by his directives. Tens of thousands of Cubans were murdered. He and his brother and Che Guevara, among others. Obama shakes his hand. It looked to me like he bowed down to him. And the lib media, well, they collectively wet themselves. They're so excited. And yet when he viciously attacks the Tea Party or conservatives or Republicans, they cheer him on. This is the sick world that we live in today, and trust me, it's sick. A friend of mine who served in the Army for a long time and who lost his son in Iraq, he said to me, of course Colin Powell had great service with the VA. He's the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And I'm not condemning the entire VA system, but there are serious, serious problems with it, and that's central government control. And I would ask Colin Powell a question that he'll never be asked on the Sunday shows or anywhere else. What do you propose to do with an over $90 trillion unfunded liability? What do you propose to do with what is now $17.3 trillion in fiscal operating debt, where 6 months ago it was under $17 trillion? What do you propose to do, General Powell? They just pop off about we need this and we need that. All of these big government types. I don't care what their backgrounds are, what their careers were, what party they are. What do they propose to do about these things? Because Colin Powell proposes to do nothing. Zero. And I would remind Colin Powell of what Lincoln said, of what Jefferson said, of what Justice Joseph Story said, and so many other great men. That if this nation collapses, it will collapse because of what occurs within its borders, not outside its borders. And no nation can survive this kind of profligate spending. Utterly irresponsible one generation to the next. No nation can survive it. So when you say, General Powell, we ought to have single-payer health care, I ask you, exactly how would you finance this? I ask you, do you not see Obamacare and the misery it's spreading? Real human tragedy? Do you not see it? You have to be Helen Keller not to see it. I'll be right back.
On the Mark Levin Show. Call now, 877-381-3811.
Wow, look at this. You can't keep your health care policy. You can't keep your doctor. And now you can't keep your prescriptions. Forbes magazine, Scott Gottlieb. You know, this only gets worse and worse and worse. Ladies and gentlemen, here's the point. Your health care decisions are out of your control. They've been seized from you. Remember we talked about Obamacare being about more than just health care, but about liberty? You're not going to be able to decide what policy that you prefer. You're going to have a smaller and smaller group of choices to make until they narrow it down to one. You're not going to be able to keep your doctor. And by the way, you doctors out there, what did I predict months and months ago? As a matter of fact, years ago. Not because I'm Nostradamus, but because it's obvious. You doctors, you're going to become servants of the state. It's just a matter of time. You're going to be told if you want to be reimbursed or if you want to be part of your profession that you're going to have to take certain patients, you're going to have to take certain payments, and you may even have to live in certain parts of the country. It's coming. They can fix their damn website at some point, but they have to force you into treating people if it's going to work, because about half of you have said you want nothing to do with this. Some surveys say 70% of you. So you're going to be trashed, and you're going to be demeaned, you're going to be attacked, And worse than that, the government is going to impose its will on you. And I'm not kidding. So you will cease to be free people. Now, those of you, particularly those of you who have expensive prescription drugs because of difficult illnesses or prolonged illnesses or what have you, you're in trouble. 2 reasons. The first has to do with the higher out-of-pocket costs patients will face. The second has to do with something even more significant. Many drugs may not be covered at all, and the costs patients incur by buying them with cash won't count against out-of-pocket caps. Listen how complicated this is. This is intended for people who apparently are so stupid they don't know how to get a photo ID to vote, but they got to get through all this in order to get a pill. And by the way, this is repercussions for drug makers with big portfolios of specialty and primary care drugs. So the attack on our healthcare system is an attack not just on what exists today, but the potential of what could have been produced and invented tomorrow. All these life-saving and life-improving drugs and technologies, they're being zapped. They're being zapped. That's what a massive disaster this is. But don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, because the Republicans are going to stand up for you. Here I have a brief piece here in National Review Online by NRO staff. I guess that means nobody wanted to sign on to it. Ron Johnson. Remember him, the senator? The senator from Wisconsin? In a visit to National Review's New York office, Senator Ron Johnson said the fight against Obamacare is entering a new phase. Quote, "We've got to start talking about transitioning." I said, uh-oh, here we go. Johnson won his Senate seat in 2010 based in large part on his fierce opposition to Obamacare, which he still adamantly opposes as an assault on Americans' liberty and criticizes it in the harshest terms. Of course. But simple repeal is no longer enough, he believes. He says the Republicans have to acknowledge that the law now exists. What law, Senator? Obama keeps changing it. This is what I mean about these idiot Republicans. The law's the law, except when Obama says it's not. Then we extend, we delay, we give out goodies to the unions, we take back stuff from this one, we take care of Congress and the staff. What law? How do you repeal, he asks. Yeah, you can't get rid of the law, but what you do with what's already there, he continues. Am I opposed to state-based exchanges? No. Really, Senator? Well, millions of people are. My daughter lives in California. Maybe you ought to check out the state exchange in California, which is a complete and utter disaster, as it is in many states that have state exchanges. He thinks it may be that they can be usable. I'm for repeal, but it's there. What do you do with what's there? We've got to. I'll tell you what you do. You act like a leader. All this talk about Mandela. All this talk about other great leaders. You get my point, Senator Johnson? You don't just accept events. You lead. You change the course of history. A friend of mine today said over at Rights Group, Brian, he said, this health care issue should be the modern civil rights issue. And he's exactly right. But Ron Johnson's not alone. He's a backbencher. Although he's very disappointing. Very disappointing. We have Mitch McConnell, who's up for re-election in Kentucky. He's the so-called Republican leader of the Senate. And he was on the Fox News channel with my buddy Neil Cavuto. And here in part is what your Republican leader, those of you who are Republicans, in the U.S. Senate had to say. Cut 9, go.
All right, so when the administration says, all right, then let's work with Republicans and fix it. Tom DeLay was on this show not too long ago, a senator, the former Republican leader in the House, saying, don't do that. Let this fall of its own accord. Don't do anything to fix this monstrosity. I'm paraphrasing, but it's pretty much the gist of what he said. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not fixable. And actually, the president said he doesn't want to change it anyway. You know, he said he's going to spend the last 3 years of his term in office defending the legislation. So he's not interested in changing it either. We're going to be experiencing the impact of this monstrosity for years to come. Now, until the American people decide to change the government. And if they decide to change the government, we'll pull it out root and branch and go in a different direction and work on the problem of cost, which could have been dealt with in an entirely different way through competitive models than this big government, big spending takeover of American health care that is Obamacare.
All the rest of that's correct. But what's he going to do about it now? They keep surrendering. You heard Ron Johnson. Oh, we got to work with the state exchanges, which are a disaster. The Cato Institute points out today that 9 out of 10 people who've signed up have signed up for Medicaid, which is a welfare program. Not Obamacare, Medicaid, which is already unsustainable. So what do we do about it? Oh, we have to change the government. How do you change the government? You have to be inspiring. You have to lead a cause. You have to be a visionary. You can't just blurt a few things out, say, oh, well, you give us the government, we can change all this stuff. You got to lead a cause. You got to lead a movement. He says it can't be fixed. Ladies and gentlemen, there are tens of millions of us who repudiate this law for so many reasons and in so many ways. This issue is sitting there. It needs to be embraced. It needs to be grasped. They need to run with it. Day in and day out, every single day. This is the biggest issue in America. It affects every single one of us, and it's only going to get worse. This is a human rights issue. This is a civil rights issue. This is an individual liberty issue. It's about compassion and humanity. Also happens to be about conservatism and constitutionalism. And they just won't do it. More from Mitch McConnell on Neil Cavuto. Cut 10, go.
What did you think of the approach that Ted Cruz had? Do you think that that mission was a misguided one?
Well, we certainly were not going to get Obamacare defunded by shutting down the government with a Democratic Senate and a Democratic president. We'd all love to get rid of Obamacare. We got a problem. It's a math problem. In the Senate, we have 55 Democrats and 45 Republicans, and we have a president who thinks it's a wonderful thing.
Well, did you tell?
So let me. So how is it that Newt Gingrich was able to force Bill Clinton to sign a bill that he had vetoed twice before? The workfare part of the welfare bill. Because Gingrich is Speaker of the House, ladies and gentlemen. He pulled all the Republicans together, virtually all of them. And he forced the battle. He forced the battle. He didn't say up front, we're not going to shut down the government. He didn't say up front, if we don't control the entire government, we can't get anything done. They didn't give up in advance. When you give up in advance, of course you're going to lose. What might have been possible if they all had gotten together, if there had been a united Republican Party in the House and in the Senate, if there had been united Republican and conservative voices on the Fox News channel, on talk radio and other places, what might have been possible is, okay, you lose round 1, but now round 2 is coming up, and you fight it on round 2, and the American people are behind you. This is how you change the trajectory of history. This is how you make the case. The left does it all the time, and our guys say, we can't do it. We might as well surrender. It's not fixable. But the state exchanges, we should look at those and look at that. They just are not up to this. They're not up to it. One more, Mitch McConnell, cut 11, go.
You said recently that the Senate Conservatives Fund is giving conservatism a bad name. You went on to say they're participating in ruining the Republican brand. What they do is mislead their donors into believing the reason we can't get as good an outcome as we'd like to get is not because of a Democratic Senate and a Democratic president, but because Republicans are insufficiently committed to the cause, which is utter nonsense. Now, that sounds a lot like what John McCain told me, pretty much word for word. But do you risk and do you mind it sounding like you're what Tea Parties call a rhino.
Well, you're mixing things up a bit. Let me make it clear. I'm a big fan of the Tea Party movement. I think it's been extremely important.
Let's stop right there. And how has that been manifested? As a big fan of the Tea Party movement, can anybody out there in the Tea Party movement tell me what Mitch McConnell has done to demonstrate that he's a fan of the Tea Party movement? Other than trash people who've been elected because of the great efforts of the Tea Party movement? Go ahead.
Regain the House and do well in the Senate in 2010. There is one particular organization that I was talking about, which I think has been counterproductive. But I think the movement in general has been very positive.
That Senate Conservative Fund has a lot of big Tea Party backing, right?
Yeah, it is one of a number of different Tea Party groups. It is the one that I think has engaged in outrageous behavior that's cost us seats. I'm a big fan of the Tea Party writ large. I think the whole movement devoted to trying to do something about government spending and debt has been very, very helpful to the conservative cause.
All right. You know, it's really not personal with me. It's not personal in the least. But do you think this gentleman is capable of changing events? Do you think he's capable of leading a populist uprising, politically speaking? I don't see it. He's had the chance. What I see are excuses. I see this out of Ron Johnson, too. Capitulation, surrender. The American people don't want this, and we need a party, and we need politicians who are going to represent us. This isn't about purity. This isn't about litmus tests. This is how you affect history. This is how you change events. You don't go along whining. If we only had this and we only had that. I wonder what Patton would have said about that. I wonder what Churchill would have said about that. I wonder what Thatcher and Reagan and all the other greats, what they would have said about Mandela, for that matter. Those of you have been listening to all the talk about Mandela. Well, the Republicans don't have this person in the leadership. They just don't. You have what you just heard. Again, it's not personal with me. These are all, I'm sure, very likable people. Hillsdale College. What can the great game of football tell us about the American character? Well, you've heard me talk many times about Imprimis, the free speech digest from Hillsdale College. It contains excellent discussions about numerous topics, and for a limited time, you can instantly download for free the edition on football and the American character at levinforhillsdale.com. That's Levin for Hillsdale.com. And you'll learn how progressives tried to put an end to the game of football. It's true, and they still are. About the great American who saved the game, and why a self-governing people should make their own judgments about things like football. And you'll learn a lot about how the fight for freedom confronts us on every front on this great speech by John J. Miller, historian, Hillsdale professor, and the author of the book, The Big Scrum, How Teddy Roosevelt Saved Football. It's an intriguing topic like all Imprimis speeches are. Receive Imprimis for free every month at levinforhillsdale.com and download this free speech on football and the American character today. Again, that's levinforhillsdale.com. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Well, I understand that there's been some kind of final deal reached with those who've been negotiating on the spending for the next few months. And Congressman Paul Ryan, the chairman of the Budget Committee, has asked to come on the program at the top of the next hour, so we're going to have him on the program. I don't know what this final deal is. I've been talking to you, so I haven't had time to look if there's stuff out there and so forth and so on. There's been some preliminary information, but I don't know what this final arrangement is, and he wants to announce it. So we'll hear what Congressman has to say, and I'll be listening as attentively as you. All I know is this, and I've said it time and again, over $90 trillion in unfunded liabilities. Now we're heading towards $17.3 trillion in a fiscal operating debt. I I believe this has the ability to take down the entire nation, the entire society, and we're going to get a sense for where we're headed. And also, as you know, I'm a leading advocate, if I may say so, of the Article 5 state convention process. I understand there are pea shooters and spitballers out there who are very superficial. They haven't looked into this. They don't comprehend it. Oh, there'll be a runaway. Oh, the Democrats will take it over. Very ignorant. They haven't taken 2 seconds to figure this out and look at it and to talk to state senators and state representatives who are involved in it. It is impossible for that to happen for a number of reasons I'll talk about in the third hour. But all that said, Ryan's been negotiating with Patty Murray, who is a leftist from the state of Washington, and you got to think, what kind of deal can they possibly reach? One of the other things that worries me, we have about 2, 3, maybe even up to 4 dozen Republicans who are French Republicans. You know, the Peter King types, and there are others, who want to keep cutting deals with the most radical left administration in modern American history, actually, on domestic spending and taxation. So this is the weak underbelly of the Republican Party with respect to the House of Representatives. There's 30, 40, 50 of these people. You know who they are, who most of them are. And some of them got elected as Tea Party conservatives and now have demonstrated that they're Benedict Arnolds. It's hard to fix that. But when we come back at the top of the hour, you will be the first to learn the specifics of what apparently has been negotiated. I'll be learning it right along with you, and I'll also be asking about it when we have Congressman Ryan. He'll be on at the top of the hour at 8 o'clock. We'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. This is Hour 2. I'm Mark Levin. The number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Sorry, I screwed up. Paul Ryan's coming on the third hour, 8 p.m. Eastern, top of the hour, not this hour. That's what they asked, and I agreed. And we'll find out more. I'm sure it's a spectacular deal. Anyway, the concentration of power in the imperial president continues. Though it continues, I mean, I want to talk about the memorial service in South Africa. No, I don't. I'll let everybody else talk about it. The Super Bowl of funeral memorials, yes. Everybody was so sad. They were sitting there taking photos of themselves, talking about themselves. It was grotesque, to be honest with you. That is, the participants. And Obama couldn't wait to go, surrounded by, a Castro and some other of the world's greatest genocidal maniacs. Just to see what's cooking. It was like a little UN meeting. You ever hear this guy, John Podesta? He's a loathsome miscreant, in my humble opinion, which is probably why Bill Clinton and Barack Obama love the guy. Well, he set up the Center for Un-American Regress, a.k.a. the Center for American Progress. He was Bill Clinton's impeachment chief of staff. Yeah, one of those. His brother's a big-time lobbyist. So they feed off of D.C., they feed off the system. While you folks are out working hard, trying to earn a paycheck, trying to save a little money, take care of your family. These are the parasites, the barnacles in our system. And Con Carroll, writing at Town Hall, points out that yesterday's New York Slimes, I don't read the New York Slimes, so if somebody refers to it, then I'll check what they're referring to. He reported that Obama had hired former President Clinton's chief of staff, John Podesta, as counselor for a year. So Clinton's impeachment chief of staff is now Obama's one-year counselor. So what did the New York Slimes say that Podesta would be doing? Mr. Podesta, I quote, will help Obama's chief of staff, Dennis McDonough, on matters related to the healthcare law, administration organization, and executive actions. I said executive actions, said a person familiar with the plans, and will focus in particular on climate change issues, a personal priority of Mr. Podesta's. Now, this is the thing. We now have significant reports with significant science telling us that we're entering global cooling. We're entering global cooling. It's cold on the West Coast. The only place it's not cold is southern Florida. Everywhere else, the skies have opened up. It's snow, it's sleet, it's windy, it's cold. So if I'm a liberal, I'm saying, look around me. Well, the climate is changing. It must be climate change. But this is what happens, ladies and gentlemen. Some years are warmer than others, some are colder than others, and some are just right. Just like the three bears in their soup. And it happens. And guess what else? There's not a damn thing humankind can do about it. You know what controls all this? We call it the sun. If the sun's particularly angry, we have a hotter year. If it's a little bit in hibernation, we have a colder year. If it's just right, we have what's considered a relatively normal year. And there's not a damn thing we little human beings can do on the face of the earth with our automobiles and our toasters and all the rest, and our cows and the flatulence and the this and the that. Not a thing we can do. And 1,000 years from now, if our species still exists, they'll be looking back on us the way they look back on people who thought the earth was square. Look at those morons. They destroyed themselves, they destroyed their liberty, their prosperity, their entire society, chasing a lie. And look at what our Environmental Protection Agency is doing. What a phony, fraudulent agency that is. It's about to destroy a few more industries. It's destroying the coal industry and all the hard jobs that go with it. Remember when we used to stand up for coal miners and stand up against black lung disease? Remember when this was the heart and soul of the Democrat Party? Now they just trash them. They walk all over them. They embrace these liberal, nerdy, environmental whack jobs. Yes, that's the face of the modern Democrat Party. So now we have this need to impose these directives on us from the executive branch. Congress has never expanded any of the existing environmental laws to include carbon dioxide, which we've talked about before. If we don't have carbon dioxide and you create it every time you intake oxygen and breathe out, what you're breathing out is carbon dioxide. Plants breathe it in, and they create oxygen. So we die without carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide was never considered a pollutant. It is not a pollutant. So how did the Environmental Protection Agency get control over it? Because the Supreme Court, by a 5-4 vote, gave them control over it. So now, as is typical, the radical nutjobs on the left, the new Greens or the old Reds, they're running wild with it. To control your life, to destroy certain industries, to try and prop up and subsidize other industries, to make your life difficult. It's nothing to do with clean air, clean water, clean clothing. Zero. It's all part of the ideological drive. Everywhere the left is, regardless of the department of the agency, they dress it up as energy and the environment and interior. They dress it up as agriculture or FDA or whatever. But they're out there to destroy what exists and to impose some abstraction on us. That's what Obamacare is. So this is what Podesta is at the White House to do. To cheerlead the President of the United States to be more of a dictator, to be more of an imperial president. Use these executive actions. And then I read in commentary online, I forget the fellow's name, John Tobin, is it? usually pretty sound. Republicans, stop using the I word. I said, what's the I word? The I word. You know what the I word? Are Republicans using the I word? Oh, my God, what's the I word? Impeachment. Oh. No, don't use the I word. Why? The public's not ready for it, you know. Just like we can't do anything about Obamacare. Don't use the I word. Yes, the president's lawless. Yes, he's violating the Constitution. Yes, he's destroying so much of the country. Don't use the I word. Don't use it. Why can't I use the I word? Well, it's politically unpopular. Well, we've got to educate the American people. We've got to explain to them what's going on in the country. We have to use the I word. It's right in the Constitution. Don't use it. What are you, a purist? What are you, a nut? Don't you want to elect more Republicans? Don't talk about repealing Obamacare. Don't use the I word. Which means I will use the I word, and I have in the past. It's perfectly legitimate. You see, this is how the left always wins. We can't use certain words. We can't even use the Constitution. Don't use Article 5. Oh, no. Don't use the I word. No. Well, it's right in the Constitution. No, I said. So Republicans and their cheerleaders in the so-called conservative media, they just like to beat their chests and pat themselves on the back. Obama's lawless. Okay, what about it? Well, just wanted you to know. Obamacare is a monstrosity, says Mitch McConnell, but we can't fix it because we don't control everything. Oh, okay. It's inevitable, in other words, ladies and gentlemen. The fact that you won't get the health care that you need, can afford, used to afford, and wanted is too damn bad. And the fact that it's too damn bad, that's inevitable. The fact that we have a lawless president who violates the Constitution and hires a henchman like Podesta to show him how to violate it even more, well, don't use the I word. So it's those executive actions that conservatives and really anybody who claims to honor the United States Constitution should worry about, writes Con Carroll. All right, I'm worried. Now what? After Obama was soundly rejected by the American voters in 2010, due to the terrorists, or as we like to call them, the Tea Party, Podesta penned a report for the CAP group that he founded, Center for American Progress, titled The Power of the President. Here in part is what Podesta said. Quote, concentrating on executive powers presents a real opportunity for the Obama administration to turn its focus away from a divided Congress on the unappetizing process of making legislative sausage. It would be a welcome relief from watching legislative maneuvering to see the work of a strong executive who's managing the business of the country through troubled times. Yes, much like Mussolini. We used to call this fascism. Now we call it progressivism. Now we call it really cool because now you can avoid that divided Congress that keeps getting in your way. And the man who wrote this report and wrote those words has been plucked out of the nonprofit world, out of the private sector, to be a one-year counselor to Barack Hussein Milhouse Obama. Because, you see, Obama has not been using executive authority enough on immigration, on appointments, on marriage, you name it. He's got to do more of that. And the Republicans have already said, don't use the I word. And Republicans have already said, not a damn thing we can do about it. And so what are they doing? They're encouraging Obama to do more of it. And he's going to do more of it. That's what they're encouraging him to do. Well, I want to tell Ron Johnson and Mitch McConnell the Constitution is the law of the land. The real, honest-to-goodness law of the land, the legitimate law of the land. But Obama won't honor it. And yet you would have us honor Obamacare. So confusing, isn't it? Well, not really. Obama is a radical left ideologue. Republicans? Mush. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
folks. The IRS is offering an early Christmas gift to individuals and small businesses owing back taxes. It's called the Fresh Start Initiative, but you need to call my friends at Optima Tax Relief. You know, George learned about the Fresh Start Initiative, and it saved him over $40,000. The IRS slapped him with a $40,000 plus tax bill, stuck him in collections, and placed a lien on his home. That's when he called Optima Tax Relief. They made an offer of compromise to the IRS for $100, and guess what? It was approved. And George happily paid the $100. The lien was lifted, and he got his life back. Now, if you've fallen behind on your taxes, can garnishments, levies, and liens be far away? The Fresh Start Initiative is the major break you've been waiting for. One quick 5-minute phone call to Optima Tax Relief, and they'll introduce you to the Fresh Start Initiative to see if you qualify. And they'll also tell you about their one-of-a-kind money-back guarantee. So call their team of experts right now while they can still make a difference for you before the holidays. Call 1-800-499-6300. That's 1-800-499-6300. 1-800-499-6300. Now, Keith Ellison. Keith Ellison was at the fast food protest on Thursday. And you know what's amazing? I was giving this more thought over the weekend, too. They want to unionize Walmart. They want to unionize all these fast food restaurants. They want to increase the minimum wage by 100%. Who do you think is going to get the brunt of that? Who do you think that's going to hurt the most? Even more than the businesses that have to deal with it. Well, obviously the customers of Walmart and the customers of these fast food restaurants. And many of them are people on fixed incomes or low-income individuals. So really, this is a punishment being imposed by preferred groups like union bosses and others on people who can ill afford it. So even again, when you think these things through and you unravel the propaganda, this is just another massive crony act aimed at rewarding liberal Democrats, the Democrat Party and their policies against hard-working individuals. That's what it is. Now, this guy, Keith Ellison, a malcontent, at a fast food protest last week, let's hear what he had to say. It's a little hard to listen to hear, so, turn up the volume. Hat tip, CNS News, go.
We in Congress will try to raise the minimum wage. We've got opponents on the other side of the aisle who say that there shouldn't be no minimum wage. So we are in difficulty fighting these guys, but we know at the executive level, an executive order can change the situation. We demand it right now. Mr. President, sign the executive order to demand that.
All right, that's enough. He's demanding that Obama sign an executive order increasing the minimum wage. You understand, ladies and gentlemen, and you do, so this is more rhetorical than anything else, that the left has become openly, brazenly totalitarian. No more talk about process, no more talk about the Constitution, unless they think they can get their way playing that game, but they have no belief in our system of government. We do not share the same values. I've pointed this out before. They want a top-down, authoritarian, tyrannical government that imposes their policy preferences, their ends, regardless of the means. And Keith Ellison is one of them. The president is one of them. Harry Reid's one of them. Pelosi's one of them. The problem is it's a majority, if not a supermajority, the Democrat Party in Washington, D.C., and the other operatives. Rule by executive power. Rule by the muscle of the presidency. And let's see if they can catch up with us. What are the Republicans going to do? They've already surrendered. Don't use the I word. Unless we control all of the government, we control none of the government. You see, ladies and gentlemen, I make this proposition to you. Not only is the radical left violating its oath, the president, the vice president, Harry Reid, and so forth, but so are the Republicans. Because the Republicans have a sworn duty to uphold the Constitution. The Republicans have a sworn duty to preserve this society. And if you're not acting affirmatively, in fact, if you're surrendering, whining, making excuses, then you're just as much at fault. And if you want the American people to give the Republicans control of the entire elected parts of our government, then you have to give them a reason. Other than, hey, we're not Obama. I know. But you're Boehner and McConnell, and that's not good enough. It's simply not good enough. There are only a relative handful of human beings that serve in Congress, ladies and gentlemen, in the Senate and the House. Those positions are far too precious for men of average intelligence, average skills, and very little guts to be filling those positions. I'm sorry, that's my opinion. Take it or leave it. I'll be right back.
The world seems so confusing. Mike will be glad to clear that up for you. Call him now at 877-381-3811.
And Obama's flunkies in the United States Senate, well, they're doing his dirty work for him, too. The Democrat Party really has had an extremely troubled past. But at least it stood for the process in the Senate. Even the Grand Kegel, or whatever the hell he was, the Grand Kugel, the Klansman, Robert Byrd, was a stickler for the parliamentary process in the Senate. Well, that's even gone. They're just ramming things home. So your United States Senate today voted 56-38. That means some Republicans voted to confirm Patricia Millett to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. She is a radical nutjob. And now the left has majority control of the D.C. Court of Appeals. So when all of you folks say, well, can't we sue? Let's sue. Let's take them on. All these regulatory cases, almost all of them, they wind up in front of this court. And the problem is the Supreme Court cannot take up all the decisions that come out of this particular appellate court, or circuit court, if you will. So Harry Reid and the Democrat Party, and apparently some Republicans, just voted to put this radical nutjob on that court. And they're going to do this all over the country for the next 3 years. And Mitch McConnell's response is, it's a sad day. It's a very sad day. Well, if you guys take back the majority, you just said if we control the government, you're going to get rid of Obamacare. If you take back the majority, will you use these same rules, apply it to legislation, and repeal Obamacare? No. No, we're not going to do that. That would be inappropriate. We don't retaliate that way, and I'm not going to discuss that retaliation anyway. Take attention off of Obamacare. Well, what are you going to do about Obamacare? Nothing. Can't fix it. I mean, what is this? And the truth is, if they win the Senate and hold the House, thanks to you, they're going to think they have some kind of mandate to do whatever it is they're doing now. And I can't figure out what they're doing now because they're not doing a hell of a lot. Then they're going to say, well, until we get the presidency, somebody like Chris Christie. Wait a minute, you mean big spending Chris Christie? Yes, Chris Christie. Until we get somebody like him, man, what are we going to do? But Chris Christie never fought Obamacare. He's the guy running as the fusion candidate. I can work with both parties. I can work with all sides. Our goal here is to govern. No, it isn't. Your goal is to follow the Constitution, to govern within the rules, not just govern wildly, out of bounds. So the Senate voted 56-38 to put a radical nutjob on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. This will affect you directly because the filibuster's been essentially suspended. And what gets me about this is I never have thought you could use the filibuster against judicial nominees for reasons I can discuss another day, and I have in the past. But the Democrats used it all the time. So it just shows you they're power hungry. And here's the thing, folks. When they're in power, they act. When they were in power during Franklin Roosevelt's regime, they acted. When they were in power during Lyndon Johnson's regime, they acted. When they had supermajorities in the Senate and House under Obama, look what they did. And look what they're doing now with the Senate and the presidency. Oh, we only have the House, the power of the purse. We can't do anything. Well, you could use that. No, we're not shutting down the government. Well, you can. No, we're not using the I word. Well, then I guess you can't do anything. You are what we call useless. You know, Mr. Producer, I was told by a well-placed, very powerful Republican in Congress that I am despised by the Republican leadership in Congress. I don't know why I'm constantly handing out the olive branch, inviting them on the program to defend themselves. Explain themselves. But they don't. By the way, this budget deal has been endorsed, I think within a nanosecond, by Barack Obama and John Boehner. So I'm sure it's great. I'm starting to read through some of it right now, but we'll wait for Congressman Ryan, who was the lead Republican negotiator in the House, to come on at the 8 o'clock hour, at the top of the hour, to explain to us what's going on here. As I say, I'm doing a little bit of reading about it, but he'll know more. And by the way, folks, while I may question and challenge, no, I'm not going to attack. But if there's some issues here, I'm definitely going to raise them, as I'm wont to do anyway. All right, let's see. Let's take a call. Have I taken a call yet? If I have, it's not terribly memorable. No, I haven't. Well, there you go. Let's see. Let's go to CJ in Detroit, Michigan, listening on the great Mark Levin app. Go.
Great one. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
It's just so apt to me tonight that you're talking about Mitch McConnell and all of these, weak-kneed, faint-hearted Republicans. The reason I found your show in the first place is that about a year and a half ago, I was getting very frustrated with the establishment GOP, and I thought, I want to hear what other conservatives think. So I saw your name in the iHeartRadio or something, and being a native Michigander and not knowing at the time your last name was pronounced Levin, I thought you were the conservative black sheep of the Carl and Sandra Levin family.
Oh, my God, no.
So I said, well, they've got a brother who's got a brain, apparently, and I've got to hear what this guy has to say. So that was almost 2 years ago. I haven't missed a show, and I've read all your books, and I can't thank you enough for as much as you've taught me about the Constitution and our founding. And I just wanted to say it's just so fitting that tonight we're talking about Mitch McConnell and all the other default capitulators, if you will. And it was the frustration over those folks that kind of drove me to find the Mark Levin show in the first place.
Well, you're very kind. Of course, he's not alone, but he wants to be the Republican leader, so lead, damn it.
Right, or get out of the way. And he's shown he can't lead, so I'm hoping this is, the very, very deep twilight of his career.
Well, CJ, you make a point. How hard is it to be the Senate Republican leader if we have a Republican president and a Republican Speaker of the House? I mean, you can put a chimpanzee in there.
Right, just kind of show up every day and say, more of that, more of that. Yes.
All right, brother. Well, thank you. I appreciate it very, very much. Maybe I should read Roger Hedgecock's latest book, Mr. Producer, if I only knew what it was. I think that's the part where you take Article 5 out of the Constitution because only Democrats can win. I mean, we've been through that. We've talked about it at length. I mean, it seems to me if somebody's going to talk about this issue and process, they ought to have a working knowledge of it, not be so superficial and knee-jerk and sound like a liberal. There's a lot that can be said about this, and a lot that we do say about this. But it's actually impossible for the Democrats to hijack such a process, as we've discussed repeatedly, and we will discuss some more. Let's continue. We have Daniel, San Antonio, Texas, XM Satellite. Go.
Hey, Mark, thanks for taking my call.
Thank you, sir.
I want to comment on the minimum wage at $15. I think it'll do nothing but discourage education. An example, my sister, she's just about to graduate nursing school, and she has a job lined up for after she's worked her butt off through college and through nursing school, and her line job's up for $22 an hour. And then you look over at a McDonald's, and a 16-year-old is making $15 an hour. I just don't think that's fair to the people that have, tried to do something with their
Now, let us be blunt. No 16-year-old is going to be hired at $15 an hour. Yeah, that's number one. No hamburger can be sold for $1.25 when you're paying people $15 an hour. So the costs are going to double when the minimum wage doubles, and it doesn't become a minimum wage. I mean, the word minimum wage, those words are supposed to mean something. And it's not that we're heartless. It's that we're rational. I mean, for the government to superimpose something, oh, you know what, that guy's getting $15 an hour. Well, I mean, I've discussed this at length before. I don't want to go back on old ground here, but it's just an absurdity. And the goal is to get some experience, to get some know-how, so you can move to the next stage. Most of us in America, not all of us, but most of us have done this. Whether in my case I was a minimum wage guy working as a janitor for a couple of summers, and other people have worked at McDonald's or have done other things. This is normal. It's natural. This is how the system works. If you're trying to raise a family of 7 as a fry cooker, then you need to look for something else. But we can't destroy the entire process in order to accommodate somebody like that. What you do with somebody like that is you teach them the ropes and they work their way up the ladder.
Yeah, and it's not going to just affect...
or you can run for Congress, get an unseemly salary, and we subsidize your health care.
Yeah, and the people that it's going to affect, you think, okay, well, my Walmart prices are going to go up and my McDonald's prices are going to go up. Well, you have to think about every employee that makes less than $15 an hour. Currently, right now, all of those prices are going up. Your lawn care is going up. You want your house painted? That's going up. You want a house built? That's going up. It's going to affect, every...
Yes, it resonates throughout the economy. You're quite right. Thank you for your call, my friend. But look how the liberal operates. Look at their mindset. We're supposed to focus on the minimum wage, not on creating more jobs, good jobs, not on creating more opportunities, good opportunities, not on expanding the economy, growing the economy, creating wealth, and success and so forth. No, we're supposed to be focused on what? The minimum wage. I want to focus on maximizing people's opportunities, not the minimum wage. And you do that through the capitalist system. You cannot do that through a top-down, iron-fisted authoritarian system. It doesn't work. How do we know? Well, look around the world. It doesn't work. And it can't work. And it never will work. And by the way, everything Obama touches turns into crap. So why do we listen to him? Let's continue, shall we? Let's see. Let us go to Greg, Fort Worth, Texas, the great WBAP. Go.
Hey, I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, and I know the debacle that the VA system is. I had to have surgery on one of my arms, and it took a year and a half to go.
I'm sorry to hear that.
This Obamacare, it is a fiasco. I'm looking at what am I going to have to pay for my mother to have what she needs. I mean, she's in the early stages of Alzheimer's, and I'm going to have to take care of her along with my wife, my sister, and my brother-in-law, and they're going to be pricing out all the medications she currently holds.
Yeah, and I hate to tell you this, the older people get, the less worth the less valuable they are under Obamacare to society. I mean, this is such a horrendous monstrosity. The fact that the Republicans can't fight hard against this and won't. The fact that our legal system is completely broken down. The fact that Obama and his arrogance through executive orders and so forth gets away with it. This law is having real effects on real people like your mother, like you. It's not enough now, Greg, that you have to go through the horror of what will be the Alzheimer's disease with your mother. You got to struggle to find coverage. You got to struggle to see who's going to pay for the medicines, who's going to pay for care and so forth. So, I mean, it's going to be an enormous amount of your time and emotion focused on this.
Exactly, and I was and am a strong supporter of Ted Cruz, and I am going to support and vote for whoever is running against John Cornyn, because he abandoned the conservative principles.
Mm-hmm. Well, he just got an opponent, in the Republican primary.
But I haven't heard the name. I heard it on the radio while I was at work. I'm a route driver, so I don't always get all of the information. But I am definitely going to look into whoever is opposing him in the primary, because John Cornyn gave up.
Well, he did more than that. He took the McConnell side. Steve Stockman has announced against, is my recollection.
Okay.
Yeah, Congressman Steve Stockman has announced against Cornyn. So you think you're going to vote for Stockman?
I'm going to have to do a little research before I do that, but with what John Cornyn has done in the past 3 years, in all probability, yes, as long as Stockman is a staunch conservative.
He's definitely a staunch conservative.
I mean, supposedly the members of Congress and the members of the executive branch took the same oath I did when I went into the Marine Corps.
Well, it's obvious some of them had their fingers crossed.
Well, then we need to break those fingers.
Yeah, break their grip, you mean. Well, listen, thank you for your service, and God bless you, my friend. We all appreciate it. And I understand what you're struggling with your mother here, and so many Americans are having to deal with this. It's just an outrage that there's not one political entity that's prepared to deal with this. I know that some of you might still be scrambling to find the right gift for your parents, grandparents, or other mature loved ones in your life. I have a great idea. Why not give them the gift of an AMAC membership? Not only is it the kind of gift that keeps on giving all year round, but for a very reasonable annual fee, I'm talking about under $20. You can provide them with hundreds of dollars in savings and discounts and other benefits exclusive to AMAC members. More importantly, you're helping them join their voice with over 1 million other conservative Americans who love the Constitution, believe in smaller, more limited government, and preserving the exceptional nature of our country and the conservative beliefs and values that make ours the greatest nation on earth. It really makes an ideal gift. I am a proud AMAC member, and I promise you your loved one will be grateful that you gave them such a meaningful gift. So please visit amac.us right now and join. Again, that's amac.us, not .com. It's a wonderful gift. Or call 888-262-2006. That's 888-262-2006. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
We have a few visitors today. I've got two of my son's huskies here. One is named Indy, and one is named Zelda. And my son Chase, he's a gamer. He plays World of Warcraft, so you NSA types out there, I have no doubt you're on there checking out everybody. Because, you can never be too sure. I'm going to tell you folks something. The NSA is spread so thin, chasing so many tails, T-A-I-L-S and T-A-L-E-S, that you have to wonder, and I don't wonder, it's obvious, that it's lost its focus. So I think it's dangerous not only to our civil and constitutional liberties, I think it's dangerous because they're not able to do their job when they're busy playing World of Warcraft and some of these other games. It's preposterous. All right. Does this mean, what time is it here? Oh! After the top of the hour, we have scheduled House Chairman, Budget Committee Chairman Paul Ryan, who's asked to be on the program, to tell us about the deal that's been negotiated. I'll be hearing it for the first time, as will you, and we'll have some questions. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, my friends. This is Hour 3. I'm Mark Levin. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. The House Chairman of the Budget Committee, Paul Ryan, is with us. He wanted to talk about the deal that's been negotiated with Patty Murray. Congressman, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, great one?
I'm doing great. Before we get started, Obama put out a statement. I don't know how he puts out a statement so fast. But he says this agreement replaces a portion of the across-the-board spending cuts known as the sequester that have harmed students, seniors, middle, all that.
Yeah.
Clears the path for critical investments. Is he saying that we're spending more than we would have, that we renegotiated this sequester?
So we're taking the sequester and taking $63 billion over 2 years and adding it back to the sequester, and we're cutting $85 billion to pay for it from the part of government that's not affected by the sequester. We call it entitlement spending or mandatory spending. The sequester hits what we call discretionary spending, government agency budgets. Half of that is defense. It doesn't affect what we call autopilot spending, the stuff that Congress doesn't deal with on an annual basis. And so we're basically switching the cuts, some of the cuts from the sequester, over to another area of government that we haven't addressed for many years. And so what I like about this agreement is I'm getting permanent law changes, permanent spending cuts to pay for a one-time relief from the sequester. In particular, we have members who are really worried about the cuts to the Defense Department, the military. The rest of the sequester hits nothing but the military starting in January, and this prevents that from happening and cuts spending in other areas. The result for me needed to be, if I did nothing, what would happen versus doing this? Doing this cuts the deficit about $23 billion.
All right, let me stop you there, because this can get complicated.
I'm sorry, I can get a little weedy myself.
No, it's all right. I'm just a pedestrian, but let me follow this. But the spending increases are immediate.
That's right.
And the spending reductions that you say will happen
over time.
Over time, so we may never see them.
No, that's not true. So this is unfortunately the nature of what we call mandatory spending. For instance, I'm saying right away, federal employees are going to have to pay, new federal employees are going to have to pay more for some of their pensions. That law changes now, but over time it accumulates a lot of savings. Later on it accumulates even more than we're accounting for.
But are they really paying for their pensions, or is that money being used as a bookkeeping thing to spend for operating expenses?
It's not like what the states do. The concern we have had is the taxpayers are subsidizing more of a public employee's pension than, say, the private sector does. And so we're saying more has to come out of the person's paycheck to go to their pension so that less has to come from the taxpayer.
But how do we know it'll go to their pension and not be spent on some operating expense?
No, it doesn't. It goes toward their pensions. It goes to the Civil Service Retirement Trust Fund. For example, there's an energy and development program that has taxpayer dollars paying for private research and development for energy companies. Now, we're getting rid of that program. But getting rid of that program permanently saves us more money over time. Getting rid of it just 1 year or cutting it 1 year, that gives me a little bit of money, but getting rid of it entirely saves me a lot of money, but it takes time to save all of that money. That's the nature of changing entitlement laws. It takes a while to accumulate the savings, but it never stops because it's permanent law, permanent savings.
Well, no, let me say that.
Yes, there's temporary increase, mostly to stop the Pentagon from getting hit again. but we're still keeping the sequester. We're not.
But hold on now, that's not what Obama says. Obama says no. This spending will help students, seniors, middle class, domestic spending.
And I think he's going to say that because he likes the domestic side of it. We don't like cutting the military. So, in the give and take, in finding common ground, money is being added back to the sequester, not just to help the military, but also to go back toward domestic spending. Now, here's what I've been minding. Namely, our principles. I don't want any tax increases, so there are no tax increases in here. They wanted stimulus spending, none of that's in here. They wanted unemployment extension, that's not in here. They also wanted $1.058 trillion. We're at $1.012 trillion. We are lower than halfway between the two of our positions.
But the congressmen, they want it out of the sequester, and they're out of the sequester.
No, they're not out of the sequester. That's the point I'm
part
trying
of
to
it.
make, Mark.
Part of it.
They're not a part of it, but we still keep the caps in place. We still keep the sequester, and we set it at a level where the military doesn't get cut anymore. Let me say it this way. 2 years ago, when I was trying to pass a budget, where I passed it through the House, our budget did a lot of things. It did Medicare reform, tax reform, it balanced the budget, it pays off the debt. It called for spending $1.019 trillion in what we call discretionary spending. Under this agreement, we wouldn't hit that number until the year 2017. So the number I was fighting for 2 years ago, I won't even hit until 2017. So we see that we're ahead of schedule, and we're moving some of the spending cuts from the Pentagon and from discretionary spending over to what we call entitlement or mandatory spending.
But you're having revenue increases, right?
No, we don't have tax
not just
increases.
on pension. I didn't say tax increases. You have revenue increases, and not just on federal employees and their pensions, right?
Yeah, that's
what are your revenue increases?
So we have user fees, which that were in my budget before, that we've agreed to in the past, which is a person who uses the service from the government should pay for that service instead of having a taxpayer subsidize what they use. For example, if you make a person pay more for their pension, yes, that is recorded as a fee, but it also means that the taxpayer doesn't pay as much for their pension.
But what else other than the pension?
Airlines. If you get on a plane and if you have a connecting flight from point A to point B, you pay $5 fee for your security. If you do not have a connecting flight, you pay $2.50. But you don't go through security twice when you have a connecting flight. So we just equalize that at $5. The reason we did that is because before 9/11, everybody who flied on an airplane paid for their own security. In their ticket was all the money to pay for airport security. Since 9/11, the flying public only pays for 40% of their security, and the non-flying taxpayer pays for 60% of their security.
Mm-hmm.
Under this agreement, the flying public, the people getting on the airplane, will pay for 60% of their security instead of 40%.
Can I give you my impression on this, what you're telling me here? This is really Mickey Mouse. I don't mean to be offensive. I just want to say, you're claiming
oversell this.
Hold on, you're claiming a $23 billion savings. I'm reading what you said here to somebody.
That's right, deficit reduction
on the deficit, and you're increasing spending by what? The same amount in the immediate in the next 2 years?
We save $85 billion, and we give back to the sequester $63 billion.
Okay, so the bottom line is we have a $90 trillion unfunded liability. Let me just say for the public, we have a $90 trillion unfunded liability that goes up by about $7 trillion a year. We have a $17.3 trillion fiscal operating debt. And the Democrats wouldn't let you really address that, would they?
That's right. So I think it's a little higher than $90 trillion, but I'll give you that number.
It'll be 100 in about a month.
Exactly. So, look, I am not suggesting that with Barack Obama we are going to fix this country's fiscal problems. I really do not believe he is willing and able to do that. But what I do think is in our interest is not shutting the government down and bringing and distracting the country away from what we want to focus on. Things like Obamacare, things like IRS, things like we want to talk about. That's point number one. So we don't think a government shutdown helps.
But I'm focused on Obamacare, so what are they going to do about it?
Well,
Nothing.
This agreement prevents a government shutdown in January and prevents a government shutdown in
I know,
October.
you guys are all worked up about that. Lots of us don't really care about that.
We think it puts us in a good position. More to the point, we also want to reclaim the power of the purse. For 3 years, we have given the president what we call a continuing resolution. That means he sets the priorities on spending, not Congress, not the legislative branch. By having an agreement like this, you not only stop a government shutdown, you get Congress to reclaim the power of the purse so that we set priorities. I'm fighting for a conscience clause rider on appropriations because I'm very worried about religious freedom. I can't do that if we have a continuing resolution. I can do that if Congress is put back in charge of appropriations, which we are because of this kind of a budget agreement. So to me, I'm advancing my principles by reducing the deficit without raising taxes, by reclaiming the power of the purse for Congress and not delegating it to the executive branch.
No, it's too late.
Well, we can go on and on about that.
What happened?
We need
what
to reclaim
happened?
Some of our power here.
Well, what happened to the 2011 deal that increased the debt limit? The sequester was supposed to be in place, and
right.
Now we're adjusting it.
And so this actually reduces the deficit by $23 billion farther
over 10 years.
Sure, but by that deal.
Ain't going to happen.
That Budget Control Act, by the way, is a result of this. That's how the sequester got where it is. And the sequester has dropped spending. And what we're saying, particularly because a lot of our members are really worried about further cuts to the military, we're going to add back in this fiscal year and the next one. That's about a year and a half. We're going to give some money back with $63 billion in the next year and a half and save $85 billion so we have more deficit. Now, these numbers aren't that big, and that's the problem. These numbers aren't big enough to balance the budget, to pay off the debt. That's what my budget does. It pays the debt off and balances the budget.
Right, let me slow you down a second.
Say that again.
Let me slow you down a second.
Sure.
It can't do both. It can't cut spending and increase spending at the same time, right?
No, your cuts can be bigger than your increases, so that your net is deficit reduction.
No, you're cutting over a longer period of time, $23 billion over 10 years, which is what? $2.3 billion a year over 10 years. And the spending part comes at the front end, pretty much, right?
Now, let me get you there. We're keeping the sequester. That's the point I'm trying to make. We're keeping on track with
some
the
of the
sequester.
sequester.
No, we're keeping the sequester in 2014, in 2015, in 2016, in 2017, on and on and on. And in 2014 and 15, we are bringing the sequester number up by $63 billion over those 2 years, and then we're cutting other areas of government spending to pay for that, in addition to extra deficit reduction. But we're keeping the spending caps where they are so that we keep those savings in the out years.
Congressman, I've just been around a long time. I don't see, you say it's going to be the law, $23 billion, that's your big net. $23 billion over 10 years. First of all, I don't believe it, not because I don't believe you. I don't believe it. Well, that's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, we're facing a fiscal disaster in this country. I know you know this. You've told me this. Hold on. I just want to get my question out. A fiscal disaster in this country, and we're talking about $23 billion over 10 years. Go ahead.
I'm not suggesting this fixes our problems. What I'm suggesting is I like the precedent that's being set. The Democrats in every budget negotiation said, I need half tax increases, half spending. We're saying all spending, no tax increases. We got that precedent established. Every time there's fiscal pressure, according to this precedent, we go after spending and we get more spending cuts so that we get more deficit reduction. I like the precedent that's being set here because we're not going back to the taxpayer. This isn't even close to what we need to do to finish the job, to fix our fiscal problems. That's what our budget does. I cut $4.6 trillion in the budget I passed in March. That's what we want to do.
Everybody's cutting a fortune, but the debt goes up to $17.3 trillion in the next few months. It's almost $100 trillion unfunded liabilities. Where the hell are all these cuts?
Hey, Mark, elections have consequences. If we would have won the election, we would have put in place our budget.
Yeah, I remember the election where we had a Republican president, Republican Senate, Republican House, and it was the most profligate spending in American history before this guy became president.
Why do you think I put these roadmap budgets out there at the end of the Bush administration in protest to the spending that was going on at that time? So people like me were fighting for these spending cuts all along. The question for me is not what is the world that I want to be, what is the world we're in? And the world we're in is the left runs the Senate and the White House, and we have the House. Can I get a step in the right direction even if I can't go a mile in the right direction? And a step in the right direction for me, and for my caucus, by the way, don't keep taking it out of the hide of the military. Make sure that we don't raise taxes. And make sure that when we have fiscal pressure, we say you've got to go after entitlement spending.
But you're increasing spending.
Even if it's $23 billion, right. We think that's $23 billion
Hold on now.
To the right way.
To be correct about this from my perspective, you're increasing spending immediately. immediately, and you're saying we're going to have $23 billion in net decrease over 10 years. Right?
That's right.
I play poker. I play it a lot.
And by the way, those savings grow even beyond that. So because we're changing the law.
Well, they have to. You know why? Because you're increasing spending in the immediate term, so you're going to have bigger cuts in the out years because your debt's going to be bigger and bigger and bigger.
The point I'm trying to make is these are permanent spending cuts, not temporary spending increases.
With all due respect,
permanent spending cuts for temporary spending increases.
Nothing's permanent. That 2011 deal on the debt ceiling, that was permanent, and it's not permanent.
Actually, it wasn't permanent because it didn't change entitlements. It didn't change the entitlement law. We are changing entitlement law.
You say the sequester's still in place, right? But you've adjusted it so you can increase, not you, but they can. The liberals want to spend. And so they want to increase spending in the short term, and they're willing to cut a deal that where you say we're going to cut the debt $23 billion over 10 years. Do I have her about right, Patty Murray?
No, I'm Paul Ryan.
No, but do I have Patty Murray about right?
I'm kidding. Yeah, I'm just messing with you. Look, people will measure this.
No, just kidding.
No, I get you. People will measure this against, I guess, what they see as the perfect, which is just stick with the sequester as it is. Here's the problem. We have too many of our members.
Can I stop you a second? I didn't negotiate the perfect. You guys did.
Well,
I'm just responding to it.
The point I'm trying to make, Mark, is too many of our members do not support sticking with the sequester because of their concerns about the military.
And more. And some of them, you have some weak ones that want more domestic spending, right?
That's true, too.
But, okay.
And what I do not want to see is a situation where we have Republicans so worked up about the sequester that they're willing to take spending increases without offsets or even tax increases. I want to prevent that from happening. This agreement prevents that from happening. This agreement makes sure that we don't raise taxes and that we cut more than we spend. You can do the 10-year, I get all that. But we have a conference of people who are very worried about the military, and we prevent the military from getting cut further. And I keep our principles intact, which is this is an effort that reduces deficit versus doing nothing. It protects the military. It doesn't raise taxes. And we reject
Don't be mad at me.
By the Democrats. We reject unemployment.
I'll tell you what. Hold on. Don't hang up. Hold on for 2 more minutes. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You know, Congressman, first of all, thank you for being with us. We don't have a lot of time, and I'm going to give you the last word. But this seems to me, you tell me if I'm right, that we're on the fiscal ship Titanic, and we're debating what's going over at the water cooler in the back there.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. That's why I'm not trying to oversell this. I don't think with this president we are going to fix our fiscal mess. I don't think he is willing and able to do what it takes to do it. Look, we passed a budget 3 years in a row in the House to balance the budget, pay off the debt. The president has never proposed a budget that ever balances, let alone pay off the debt. Neither has the Senate. So we're not dealing with governing, a government here that is willing to do that. The premise of your arguments, which are very logical, and you're great at putting me through my paces, that's why I like coming on your show, is that, we could just stick with the sequester. The problem is we have too many members that don't want to or are unwilling to do that because of the military.
But not just the military, right? Not just the
military. So I am motivated to get an agreement that keeps Republican principles intact, which is reduce the deficit without raising taxes. And that's where we are, and that's why I think this is a step in the right direction. And I think it also advances some of our other goals, which is keep speaking truth to power, don't shut the government down and distract from this train wreck of Obamacare that's right before us.
I got to go. No offense. Thank you, Congressman, for coming on. I think we gave you a good amount of time. I don't think that the liberals are going to hold to a $23 billion cut over 10 years, or any cut over 10 years for that matter. Proof is in the pudding. But there you have it. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin, a proud fanatic for the Constitution. Call him now at 877-381-3811.
Now, you probably heard me talk about the metal I designed for Gold Line. featuring Benjamin Franklin in Independence Hall. This special medal has now been minted with 1 full ounce of silver, and no more than 3,000 medals will be made. Goldline has a special offer for all my listeners today, so listen closely. Goldline's now offering the exclusive, limited production, first Special Service Force half-ounce silver coin. This coin honors the American and Canadian elite commandos who fought in World War II. And these coins are 99.99% fine silver, guaranteed for weight and purity by the Royal Canadian Mint. Now here's the offer for my listeners only. This exclusive. If you call and speak to a Goldline account executive about Goldline's exclusive products, Goldline will send you the first Special Service Force silver bullion. It's a coin. It's absolutely free. This offer is only available for the first 100 callers. The first 100 callers to 1-877-365-COIN. So call right away. There's also a limit of 1 free coin per household. So don't miss out. Call Goldline now, 1-877-365-2646. And for a limited time, when you call Goldline for its free investor kit and mention that Mark Levin sent you, Goldline will include a free pocket-sized Declaration of Independence and Constitution along with the free investor kit. So you've got a lot of good reasons, particularly diversification, to call Goldline today. 1-877-365-2646. Read Goldline's important risk information to see if buying precious metals is right for you. 1-877-365-COIN, 1-877-365-COIN, 1-877-365-2646. You know, it's a pleasure to have State Senator, Indiana Senate President with me right now, David Long. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, Mark. How are you?
Very, very good. You know, this is perfect timing. We had Chairman Ryan on, who's a very good guy, very nice guy, trying to do the best he can, quite frankly, under impossible circumstances. The federal government is busted. The fiscal situation is a disaster. They make these deals. It has almost zero impact on the debt long term, on unfunded liabilities and so forth. You have been a leading voice and have helped collect a number of state reps and state senators. And this past Saturday, December 7th, you held the first Mount Vernon Assembly. And I wanted you, if you can, to report back and tell us what happened.
Well, it was successful. You know, it was a voluntary thing. We all paid our own way out there. There were 97 state legislators from 32 different states that showed up. We met for 4 hours, and we were credentialed. We met at the Fred W. Smith Library, which is on the site of Mount Vernon. It's a brand new facility. And we essentially put together the start of this process and agreed to meet again in June in Indianapolis for Stage 2, where we'll start the process of putting rules together for a convention of the states. So we, as much as anything, found common ground and established some basic agreements, and are now going to go to a more formal process of asking Senate presidents and speakers around the country in all 50 states to appoint 2 people from each chamber, a Republican and a Democrat. We're going to try to do this in a bipartisan way, and to meet in Indianapolis for the process to get started. And from there, we see another meeting in December, which we're going to call well, I don't have the exact verbiage in front of me. I think we're going to call it the U.S. Rules Drafting Conference. And from that conference, we hope to establish the bones of the structure for a convention of the states. So it's an exciting time. We have to do this because, as you know, there is no specific blueprint in the Constitution for how you put this together. And so we have to go into this being totally prepared and thoroughly ready to push back against anyone who tries to undermine this by saying, for instance, Congress saying they're going to put the rules together, they're going to tell us how to do it. We want to make sure we're united in saying we've got the process, we're agreed on how we're going to go about doing this, we know the subject matter we want to discuss, and we're going forward.
Well, we do know Congress has no substantive role whatsoever. That much we do know. Now, Senator, let me ask you this. I don't mind bipartisan or what have you, but it is important to me, and I think millions of other people, that the objective be to reestablish our constitutional system, whether you're focused on one area or 2 areas or 20 areas or whatever. So I don't mind it being bipartisan, but of course, but party or no party, I'm just hoping that these are individuals who are eventually selected, and I know you can't control this altogether, who have the same overall mission in mind. Do you think that'll be accomplished?
That's the hope, obviously. And I mean, you're right. Once you take this next step, and you're asking, but you have to have delegates appointed, and it has to be under authority of the states. And clearly, the leaders of the state legislatures are the ones, I think, to do it. We're taking this approach right now, Mark, that we believe that fiscal responsibility and states' rights are not partisan issues, and that they're fundamental to some of the problems that we're seeing today, both in the states' rights being trampled and the fact that there's no accountability in Washington. And so the underlying goal for me, and I think for many who attended, if not most, attended the Mount Vernon conference, was to try to deal with this ruinous amount of debt that's being accumulated in Washington and try to put some reins on the whole thing and reel this back in. And I think that I take that, knowing other presidents around the country of different senates, including some Democrats, they all chafe at the fact that Washington does not have to balance its budget, and the states do. And so whether you're Republican or Democrat, you got to do it in your state. And I think we're used to that, and no one that I know who's a leader in this country in the state level believes that or can really stomach what's going on in Washington right now as far as the fiscal irresponsibility. So on that premise, we feel like we could find bipartisan consent. We'll see.
Yeah, because if you guys don't do it, it's not going to get done. That's quite obvious to me. I mean, we have an entrenched mentality in Washington, D.C., and they're not going to stop. And I know you know this, or you wouldn't be involved in this. So tell me this. You had 97 individuals there, 32 states. Can you give us an example of some of the states? I mean, Idaho, Indiana, Arizona. What else? Who else did you have?
All three were there, absolutely. Kansas, Texas, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Tennessee, Kentucky, Florida, all the way up into Rhode Island. We had, Missouri, you name it. I think most of them were there.
Texas.
We didn't have anybody from New England save Rhode Island, and that was a bit of a disappointment, but that is a different mindset up there. Hopefully we can change that, but we did have a very diverse group, as far west as Idaho and Arizona. Mm-hmm. So it was a great group of people. It was exciting just to know that something like this hasn't happened in a couple hundred years, and that people around the country, legislators, were sharing ideas and formulating with some very good ideas and comments how we need to take the next step. And we made some changes in what we thought we would be doing as far as our resolution based upon some of that input. So it was an exciting moment. It was historic, and we think it's going to lead to something big. Obviously, it's not an easy path, and it will take some time. But we are focused on this, and we're going to go forward, and we are getting momentum, and I think this can lead to something very, very big if we can bring in 34 states, and that's going to be the trick. As you know, we need 2/3 of the states to petition to have this convention. So that's where we're aiming right now.
Well, it is very exciting, and the truth is it may take a little while. I mean, it may not happen in 6 months, 10. Everybody thinks things are going to happen in 2 seconds. They're just not. But building momentum, trying to satisfy some of the concerns, and, of course, at some point you're going to get the attention of the politicians and bureaucrats and media in Washington, D.C., and then it'll get even more interesting, won't it?
Well, they're taking notice now, so we're hearing from a variety of people on it, and those on the left are beginning to send up warning bells that, of course, demonizing the whole process already. We've heard from some prominent political leaders in Washington who are excited about it and want to know if they can take part, and we politely tell them,
no,
thanks for your interest, but no, this is going to be a state-driven process, and we have to maintain control of it at the state level for it to be successful. So,
there are some commentators out there saying, well, this will be runaway. They don't even read the bills you passed in Indiana. How could it be runaway if you have a set of rules, you have the ability to appoint and pull back delegates, and ultimately 38 states have to ratify? I mean, what we have running away right now, as you well know, Senator, is the federal government. They're running away. They're running away from their responsibilities under the Constitution.
No, they are. And, I mean, it's not just Congress. I mean, obviously, as you've written in your book, and I think a lot of us notice, the basic loss of balance out there right now in Washington. I mean, the executive branch is really beginning to take over at an alarming level. And, you could argue all you want about Congress doing this or doing that, but the fact of the matter is they've abdicated so much of their power to the executive branch right now, which is totally unaccountable. It's frightening. And, that goes just with all the regulations that are being generated out of the various
departments. That's why I don't
there.
Want you to overlook that 3/5 vote I argue for. I mean, you'll do what you want with the state legislatures when it comes to these federal statutes and regulations, because you're exactly right. And if the state legislatures acting together can't control what an out-of-control executive does or Congress or so forth and so on, it's not going to be controlled.
Yeah, the time for this idea has come, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. I don't think we've ever seen anything like this, and I hope that the alarm bells are going off for an awful lot of people around the country. I think they are. And I think the more they learn about this, the more excited people get. I've heard an awful lot of people, from emails or just people in my hometown here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, telling me they've listened to your show, they've read articles, they've heard about it, and they're excited about it because they finally think something might be able to be done about this mountain of debt. It scares them, and it should. And frankly, I think this is the only way we're going to get anything done, and that's why we're determined to see this thing through. But as you said, it's a path, and it's going to take some time. We have to get it right. We have to structure this correctly, and I think the right people are pushing this forward. So I'm very optimistic right now.
And I'm very pleased because you're obviously a man of great integrity. You're strategic. You're thoughtful. And really, I can't think of anybody better to be really pressing this among other state reps and state senators. So I want to thank you on behalf of my audience, and we're going to keep checking in with you if that's okay.
Absolutely. Love to talk about it. And again, my friends, Representative Kathinga from Wisconsin and Huffman from Ohio, Bands from Oklahoma, and Senator Tyson from Kansas were the other 5 people that were involved in this, and they're terrific also, and they're very much involved on a day-to-day basis, deserve a ton of credit for this. Really.
Well, we'll keep an eye on them, too.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Senator, God bless you, my friend. Isn't that great? And I hope other state senators and state representatives listening, including in these states that didn't attend. I don't think anyone went from my home state of Pennsylvania, which is annoying as hell. But some of the other states, too. You need to go, even if your state's a blue state or a purple state or whatever color it is. This is important, and ideas matter, and this idea is getting legs. How far it'll go, I don't know, but it's gone further than I thought already. Hasn't it, Mr. Producer? Yeah, because people are worried. They're looking at the federal government, the bloat, the coerciveness, the Obamacare, the presidency, the court. I mean, it's a mess. And there is recourse under the Constitution. And my friends at the Tea Party Patriots, they're well aware of this too. We're now more than 2 months into the implementation of Obamacare, and it's a complete disaster. I've been warning about this. Others have. And you know it. And my friends at the Tea Party Patriots have been doing everything in their power to warn the American people. In fact, they've pledged to leave no stone unturned to continue to fight this monstrous law. Now, they showed up at town halls in 2009. They organized protests as the bill was being rammed through Congress. They helped usher in a landslide midterm election in 2010. They've been continuously calling for full repeal, and they have been fighting, and they're going to continue to fight. Because unlike certain members of Congress, they don't give up. The fight to stop Obamacare is not over. And Congress obviously is not leading the way on this, but now you can. Please go to realhealthcarefreedom.com. That's realhealthcarefreedom.com. Share your ideas on what real healthcare reform actually looks like with your own experiences. We want to hear from you right now, today. So go to realhealthcarefreedom.com and share your ideas. That's realhealthcarefreedom.com. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
folks, I want to talk to you very briefly about holiday care packages for the troops. Move America Forward is proud to offer Christmas and holiday care packages for the troops overseas. You can sponsor a single soldier or a whole battalion of troops and send a package full of support and treats that match the season. So, I want you to at least consider doing this if you don't mind. Go to moveamericaforward.org, moveamericaforward.org. You know, we still have troops overseas. I know, people forget this. Well, we don't forget it here on the Mark Levin Show. So if you can help us, they have these beautiful care packages. They're equipped with seasonal peppermint or pumpkin spice coffee. They also have, what else? They have holiday peppermint Oreos. I can go on and on and on, but I don't have time to. So I hope you'll consider going to www.moveamericaforward.org. That's moveamericaforward.org. How much time do I have, Mr. Producer? Give me a caller. I can't find my call screen here. My buddy Don, Lake Ronkonkoma, New York. How are you?
Hey, Mark. What a way to end your show on such a high note. I've been wanting all weekend to see what happened at that Mount Vernon convention, and having David Long on from Indiana was really the pest of resistance of the show. It was very uplifting to hear. You must be immensely proud of the satisfaction to the writer to see the fruits of your
I'm
work.
excited, baby, and it's not just me. There's a number of people. But that said, I just want this to take hold, and I want Washington to be scared to death of this.
Yeah, I really admired the sources you used in that book, the notes of James Madison and the passion of Virginia Delegate George Mason. You put them on a national discussion now. It's great. I'm so proud of you, Mark. I really am.
Well, you're very kind, Don, and you've been with me from the beginning. God bless you, my friend.
You betcha.
All right, you take care. And ladies and gentlemen, if you hear people reject this, they're rejecting the Constitution. They are rejecting Madison, and yes, Hamilton and Mason, and all the men who were at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia in 1787, all of whom voted for this. That doesn't mean we recklessly pursue something. And as you could hear from State Senator Long, the Senate President of Indiana, as well as others, nobody's recklessly pursuing anything except those people at the federal level who are destroying the fiscal house that is our country, who are destroying the constitutional system. We have a President of the United States who is out of control. We have a Supreme Court. Every June we sit on the edges of our chair and we're wondering what the hell 5 of these justices are going to do. We have a Congress that passes massive legislation. They don't even read their own bills. And then they empower massive bureaucracies to pass regulations that are laws telling us what we can do, what we can't do, banning and mandating and controlling our lives. There is no other recourse. There is no other constitutional, legitimate, civil way to address this, which is why I talk about it. If we don't talk about it now, then we'll never talk about it. And if I don't talk about it, nobody else will talk about it because they're either bored with it or incapable of explaining it. Now it's time for me to go off and get some meatballs, maybe with a little spaghetti, time for dinner. Ladies and gentlemen, we salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, and emergency personnel. And I salute you, America. I'll see you right here tomorrow. I'm Mark Levin.